We will begin in 2 minutes, brothers. Well, good morning, brothers. Good to see you on this Friday morning. I'm going to call the Synod to order and ask if our brother Gary Zechfeld would come forward to lead us in our opening devotions.
Well, good morning. Let's stand to sing Psalm 33, stanzas 1, 3, and 5.
Oh,
I'd like to read that same psalm that we just sang, Psalm 33. In this psalm, we are given all kinds of reasons to praise him, as we have just done, and we'll give a few moments reflection on the theme of hope, the hope in the Lord's steadfast love. Shout for joy in the Lord, O you righteous. Praise befits the upright. Give thanks to the Lord with the lyre. Make melody to him with the harp of 10 strings. Sing to him a new song. Play skillfully on the strings with loud shouts. For the word of the Lord is upright, and all his work is done in faithfulness. He loves righteousness and justice. The earth is full of the steadfast love of the Lord. By the word of the Lord the heavens were made, and by the breath of his mouth all their host. He gathers the waters of the sea as a heap. He puts the deeps in storehouses. Let all the earth fear the Lord. Let all the inhabitants of the world stand in awe of him. For he spoke, and it came to be. He commanded, and it stood firm. The Lord brings the counsel of the nations to nothing. He frustrates the plans of the peoples. The counsel of the Lord stands forever, the plans of his heart to all generations. Blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord, the people whom he has chosen as his heritage. The Lord looks down from heaven. He sees all the children of man. From where he sits enthroned, he looks out on all the inhabitants of the earth. He who fashions the hearts of them all and observes all their deeds. The king is not saved by his great army. A warrior is not delivered by his great strength. The war horse is a false hope for salvation, and by its great might it cannot rescue. Behold, the eye of the Lord is on those who fear him, on those who hope in his steadfast love, that he may deliver their soul from death and keep them alive in famine. Our soul waits for the Lord. He is our help and our shield. For our heart is glad in him, because we trust in his holy name. Let your steadfast love, O Lord, be upon us, even as we hope in you. The eye of the Lord is on those who fear him, on those who hope in his steadfast love. We hope that we will be finished this morning. You hope that I will be brief, but we've come to learn that those words don't mean much in this assembly the past 5 days. Hope. This morning as I took a walk, we're not staying in one of the recommended hotels, and I walked around a couple of blocks, and I felt safe but very, very sad to see many, many people just clearly, visibly hopeless. And we can look at ourselves as well and ask that question, where is my hope? We hope in what we fear, what are we afraid of? And we can find those places in our lives as well where we're finding significance or satisfaction in the wrong things. Our hope is misplaced. We have a false hope. And even as elders, as ministers of the gospel, it's so easy to misplace our glory, to misplace our hope, to not place it in the Lord, not place it in his gospel and the preaching of the word, but in all the wrong places. And here in Psalm 33, first, the psalmist says, let's think about who God is and what he's done and what he is doing. Think of who he is as the God who is upright and true, who loves righteousness and justice, who not only is righteous and just, but he loves it. There's a whole world of pleasure in our God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. At his right hand are pleasures forevermore, a good, true, and a beautiful God, and a God of this great goodness. The earth is full of the steadfast love of the Lord. And we see that in his creation, verses 6 to 9, and the things that he has made, and is planned, designed, has purpose and meaning. And then in history, in verses 10 to 12, we see God's rule, sovereign rule over all of history, that not even evil itself is, in a sense, wasted. God, there's nothing wasted in this story that God is writing. It all ends up to his glory and for the good of his people. What a comfort, what a hope for us. And then we are confronted with the heart of the matter. And that is verses 16 and 17. A king is not saved by his great army. A warrior is not delivered by his great strength. The war horse is a false hope for salvation. King Xerxes had an army that was many, many times the size of the Persian army. Herodotus said 2 million or more. Modern estimates say maybe 250,000, but anyways, it was way larger than the Persian army. This is 480 BC, and yet he was decimated. He went home a hopeless man, and he fiddled his time away with wine and women. This is the king of Queen Esther fame. A man without hope. He had placed his hope in the wrong thing. Here in Psalm 33, we are taught that those who fear the Lord then have hope in his steadfast love. A steadfast love which we know is free and it is sovereign. We cannot buy it, we cannot earn it, manipulate, or control it, but it is not arbitrary. It is not inaccessible. It is offered. It is held out freely in the Lord Jesus Christ, in the person of Christ. And we get to offer that, the most accessible thing in the world, the steadfast love of the Lord in the person of Jesus Christ. This is our joy, a reason for praise, and a reason for great hope in the gospel ministry and as servants in the church of Christ. Shall we pray? Our Heavenly Father, we bless your name for all of these reasons, for who you are and what you have made and what you have done and are doing. And we thank you, Lord God, that there is nothing that can frustrate your plans or your purposes. Lord Jesus Christ, you will build your church and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. We pray that as we finish our labors today, that you would help us to do this in hope that is rooted in true and genuine fear of the Lord. Father, this is why we do it, because we fear you, and help us to turn away from, to resist, and to repudiate all of our false hopes and our ungodly fears. We pray for the executive once again, and ask that you would continue to give to them the grace that you have thus far. They may do their work well, and that you would also bless all the decisions that we make in the next few hours. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Brother Zeckfeld. I have a few announcements before we begin. First, you may have noticed as you walked in, there are some baskets on the middle table in the narthex there. As you leave the assembly today, I don't have my lanyard on. I left it back in the hotel. Sorry, I don't have my lanyard. Please take your lanyard, mine's in the hotel. Take your lanyard and put it in one of those baskets. The ones we're using today are from Synod 2022. And so we're going to pass these on to Synod probably 2026. So please leave your lanyards in the baskets when we leave. Second, if there is a Jason Sculling here, he's not listed as a delegate, but as probably a visitor. If there's a Jason Sculling here, please see Dawn Dirksen before you leave. She's back in the booth. The following delegates either have left or will leave before our 10 o'clock break. From Thunder Bay, John Eisinga. From Hills, Brother Muthusamy. From Hamilton, Reverend Veldman. From Visalia, Reverend Roots. From Abbotsford, Reverend Vanderheiden. From New Haven, Reverend Knott and Elder Caprocini. From Byron Center, Brother Nelson. From Oak Lawn, Reverend Miller, Elder Van Groningen. From Dutton, Brother Wagonmaker. From Calgary, Brother Reverend Davis and Elder Peter Van Nierop. From Grand Prairie, Reverend Giles. And from Saskatoon, Brothers Elder Prime and Elder Vandenbrink. They either have left or will leave before our morning coffee break. I have a few lost and found items. Probably the most important one is this cell phone. If you are missing your cell phone, here it is. We have a taker on the phone. No? Yes, no. Okay. So here's a cell phone. And then there are a number of other items that were lost. I want to make sure these get brought back to the right person. I have a business card here from Westminster Seminary, California. I have a postcard here from Westminster Seminary, California. I have a folder here from Westminster Seminary, California. I have the Update magazine from Westminster Seminary, California. And I have a coffee cup. Oh, we're getting... Oh, it's David Roth. Okay.
No, David Roth is calling.
So if you're not... David Roth is calling. And of course, a coffee cup, Westminster Seminary, California. If any of these are yours, good job. Good job.
Hello.
I don't know how to answer it. I'm a Luddite. I don't know.
Oui, bonjour. Hello? Good morning. You're at Synod 2024? Somebody lost their phone. Okay. They hung up on me.
Okay. No surprise. Okay. With that, our vice chair has asked for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you very much, Brother Chairman. Yesterday was a very long day. It was the summer solstice, longest day of the year. For us in Canada, it's all downhill from here. Winter's just around the corner. Speaking of all downhill, it makes one a little bit reflective. I've been young, now I am old. I've never seen the righteous forsaken or his descendants begging bread. We all get older one day at a time. Some of us, in a way worthy of celebrating. I understand that it is our chairman's birthday today. And so could you imagine nothing better than a day when the brother gets to take this particular chair and now gets to celebrate his birthday at Synod. Could you imagine that? What a soli Deo Gloria day. Let me lead us in the singing of Happy Birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear chairman. Happy birthday to you.
Yeah. Thank you, my brother, and thank you, brothers. Now, if you really wanted to give me a birthday present, move for one more week of Synod. Okay? I do thank you. As we move on now, we go to the concept minutes, and they were distributed last night. We will once again take these section by section, and if there are additions or corrections, please come to the microphone. First, section Articles 64 through 70. Any corrections in 64 through 70? Then 71 through 73. Anything in 71 through 73? Articles 74 through 78. 74 through 78. Articles 79 through 83. Articles 84 through 87. Article 88 through 94. Article 95 through 97.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Brother Vanderpool.
Hold on a second. In 9736, the article title was accidentally taken out of the recommendation. Our advisory committee did approve that, but in the formatting it was lost. So it should also read Article 65, parity of consistories and office bearers, before the text of the article itself.
Do you have that, Mr. Clerk?
In the ground, you're saying?
No, in the actual article change, it should also include the article title as part of the change.
So where?
Let me grab my computer.
Can you direct us exactly where we're at, Brother Vanderpool?
9736. Change the word churches twice, and church to consistories, and consistory, so that it reads Article 65, parity of consistories and churches. No consistory shall in any way lord it over other consistories, and the rest of that is, okay. Look in the agenda, should have the proper wording.
You just
Yep.
parity of consistories and office bearers? You said consistories and churches. Okay, thank you.
You have that correction? Okay, very good. Anything else on 95 through 97? And then 98 through 102? I see no one. Is there a motion to approve the concept minutes? That's supported? Any questions or discussion? Those in favor of that, please say aye. And opposed, the same sign. That is adopted. We will turn our attention back to Advisory Committee 3, Report B, revised. I'll ask Brothers Buchestein and Jason Vanderhorst to come forward, or Vanderhorst to come forward. To remind you where we are, brothers, we are under recommendations. Number 2, what is before us is an amendment to 2(1)B. And that amendment is to add in parentheses after the sentence, which is in keeping with Regulations for Synodical Procedure 1.4. That is the amendment before us. I see Brother Levart rising to speak.
Thank you, and a hearty happy birthday. I'd like to make an amendment to the amendment,
You are allowed to.
an addition of the words "and Acts 2001, Acts of Synod 2001, Article 35A3.
All right. The motion is to make an amendment to the amendment, which is allowed, to add the words "and Acts of Synod 2001, Article 35A3.
Would you like me to read that?
Would you please read
article? If I can find it, yeah. Here we are. That Synod amend overture, I drop in sentence, each class will designate A3, sorry. The decision now reads, the Federation adopts a policy of holding synodical meetings in each of the classes in turn.
Holding synodical meetings in each of the classes in turn. And we're saying that that's to be included in that "and" article, or Acts 2001. Is that amendment to the amendment supported? It is supported. Questions and discussion on the amendment to the amendment? We're just adding those words to the amendment. Any discussion on that? I see no one rising to speak. Those in favor of amending the amendment in this way, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same sign. Aye. That is adopted. Now the full amendment is before you, parenthetically, in keeping with Regulations 1.4 and the synodical citation. To speak to that, Brother Folkerts.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, just to remind our body or you what we had talked about last night, and I would speak against the amendment simply because 1.4 does not require or even suggest that synod be held, that it be held in specific classes. It says the meeting shall be convened by a consistory, but we just recently convened a classis meeting in a different location than the hosting church. So I think this is an error. I appreciate the recommendation from the Acts of Synod previously. I think that's a worthy amendment, but I would vote against the amendment as it now stands.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak to the amendment? I see no one seeking the floor. On the amendment only? Oh, yes. Do you have that, Mr. First Clerk?
The amendment reads to add at the end of recommendation 2(1)B the following in parentheses: which is in keeping with regulations of Synodical Procedure 1.4 and Acts of Synod 2001, Article 35A3.
That is the amendment to add that in parentheses. Those in favor of that amendment, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same sign? Aye. I judge that's been adopted. Now, recommendation 2 is before you, that the mandate of the committee be as follows. Brother Wagonmaker.
Right, the concern is there's,
Excuse me, the reporter?
No, I'm fine.
No, I'm
thanks.
okay. Brother Wagonmaker.
I don't see much about financial concerns, but I think perhaps it can be addressed by changing 2.1b more. That currently reads, while the location may move from place to place, the location ought to be as convenient for the churches as possible. So it could theoretically throw finances to the wind. So I want to propose an amendment to strike as and as possible, so that it would read, while the location may move from place to place, the location ought to be convenient for the churches. So that would strike the first as and then as possible. I move that amendment.
Very good. A motion to amend by striking the word as and the words as possible. Is that supported? It is supported. Questions or discussion on that amendment? Those in favor of that, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same sign. That has been adopted. Number 2 is before you. I see no one wishing to speak to it. Yes. Just a point of clarification. Could you? The mic.
Does this mean that we can have Synod in the Chicago area every time?
I don't believe it means that, because
It's still to rotate geographically.
yes, that was the intention of the citation from Brother Levart of the Acts of Synod.
Okay.
That's my understanding.
I'm only asking for clarification. I'm not arguing one way or the other. I just want to be able to, I want that committee to know that.
Yes, yes, thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Reporter.
we have 2 classes in Southern Ontario. Is your understanding that we would be able to, let's say, have 2 classes meetings in a row at Redeemer University, one convened by Synod, one convened by the one classes, one convened by the other?
Well, the rotation is already set.
Yeah.
And it would never happen that those 2 classes are in a row.
Okay, so if
They could both hold it at Redeemer.
Right.
In turn.
in their turn,
In
yeah.
their turn, yes.
Okay.
Yes. Anyone else to speak to recommendation number 2, the mandate of the committee? Yes, brother. Good to see you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So does this still read, while the location may move from place to place? Is that the current
That
reading?
is the current reading.
But we're saying it must move from place to place, correct? If we're rotating.
Yes.
I move to strike everything up to the comma and to capitalize the.
Strike everything up to the comma, striking the
Through the
words
comma.
while the location may move from place to place, striking those words. That is a motion to amend. Is that motion supported? It is supported. Questions or comments on that amendment to strike those words? Those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same sign. That is adopted. Thank you, brother. Brother S.
I might be confused because we're way in the weeds at this point, but my understanding of what we just passed was that it cannot be at Redeemer twice unless Redeemer happens to span into 2 different classes. It's actually in both of them? Yes. The college? Okay. Because
It's the
otherwise
wacky
this is
Canadians, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
It's
yeah. And then would have the last synod been ruled out of bounds?
I'm sorry, was the last question?
Based upon what we just passed, wouldn't the last synod meeting be ruled out of bounds that we didn't follow? I guess I'm confused about why we are getting so far into the weeds on this particular, that we're being more precise than our synodical procedures. And so I'm a little bit worried that we're going to bind our own hands.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
Would-
Mr. Chairman.
Is it your understanding of what we have before us now that if it were adopted, for example, the Lethbridge Consistory could convene the next synod, but host it in Chicago?
That is not my understanding. It must be hosted within the geographical bounds of that classis.
Do you believe that? Never mind.
Brother Luth.
Mr. Chairman, I would suggest that we just adopt it as things stand and allow the committee to do their work with the assumption that they're going to be under the convening consistory of Lethbridge, located somewhere in Lethbridge, and we can work out the details with overtures to the next synod as we see how this actually works itself out.
All right, thank you, brother. Anyone else to speak to number 2?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
can I make a motion?
Yes, you may.
I move that we strike B from the mandate.
The motion is to amend by striking letter B from the mandate in its entirety. Is that motion to amend supported? It is supported. Questions or comments on the amendment to strike letter B? I see no one rising to speak. Those in favor of striking letter B, please say aye. Aye. Oppose the same sign? Aye. I'm going to ask you one more time. Those in favor of striking letter B, please say aye. Aye. Oppose the same sign? Aye. I can't call it. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Those in favor, please raise your hands. Okay, those opposed, please raise your hands. The motion has been adopted. Thank you. Letter B is stricken. Number 2 is before you, Brother Dykstra. You are before me. Yes, Brother Dykstra. In many ways.
Blessings on your birthday.
Thank you, brother.
What is it? 42, 43? What are we at?
Make any amendments you want, brother.
Just by way of response to a previous speaker, it is my understanding, based on the language of our recommendation, that this organizing committee would not be under the convening consistory. It would be under the JVA, and it would work with the convening consistory. Thus, the convening consistory will not identify the location for synod. This committee will. Now, in this instance, that's fine. Classis Western Canada is like better than half of Canada. We can have this synod in Thunder Bay, and it would still be within the bounds of Classis Western Canada. So we can have it in Ontario, and it would, for Americans, sorry, I forgot, you guys don't know your geography. I've lost everybody. Anyway, but it's just to note, lest the body be misled, this organizing committee would not be under the convening consistory. They would report to them, but they'd be under the joint venture agreement.
Thank you for that clarification, Brother Dykstra. Appreciate that. Number 2 is before you. Yes, Mr. State Clerk.
Just a point of clarification again. With no bone to pick either way, We just eliminated references to Synod 2001 and the rotation schedule. If this passes, does that render those decisions null and void and gives the committee permission to go anywhere?
That is my understanding, Mr. Stated Clerk.
Okay. Just so everybody understands, we appoint the convening consistory, so we can appoint, following a rotation, but then the committee is free to go anywhere.
That is my understanding, yes. Number 2 is before you, the mandate of this committee. I see no one rising to speak. Those in favor of adopting this mandate, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same sign. That has been adopted. Number 3, please.
Recommendation 3, that Synod appoint the following members of URCNA churches to the Synodical Organizing Committee. 1, Reverend Casey Freswick, convener. 2, Mrs. Pam Hessels. 3, Mrs. Dawn Dirksen. 4, the JVA treasurer. These members be appointed to a term lasting from one synod to the next with the possibility of reappointment. Each subsequent synod will confirm reappointments or new appointments as needed. Recommendations may come from the committee itself or from the floor of synod. The convening consistory may fill vacancies between synods as needed.
Number 3 is before you. Those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same sign. That is adopted.
Recommendation 4, that travel costs and any additional expenses for committee members will be included in the costs of synod.
Number 4 is before you. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same sign. That's adopted.
And then recommendation 5, that this be synod's answer to Overture 13.
We did adopt the overture, did we not?
Reconsidered.
Okay, then number 5 is properly before us. Those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That is adopted. Thank you, brothers. We are going to turn our attention to Advisory Committee 1, Report 1D. 1D. I invite Brother Pauls and Brother DeRoy to come forward to present this report to us. And when you are ready, Mr. Reporter, if you would read us your materials, summary, and your first recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Materials, Statistics, and Directory Editor's Report, page 35 of the proposed agenda. Summary, the Statistics and Directory Editor's Report describes the process of collecting and compiling the statistical and contact information of the churches. An analysis of that data is provided and presented in this report. Recommendations, number 1, that Synod receive the report of the Statistics and Directory Editor.
All right. Anyone wish to speak to that? Those in favor, please. Oh, I'm sorry, Brother Wagenmaker.
All through this, can we replace statistics and directory editor with statistician? That's what's used in our regulations. I know, but do I need to make that as an official motion? Or?
I'm going to accept it as a
friendly, it's a friendly perfection.
Friendly perfection.
Yep. Thank you.
Made throughout the report. Thank you for that, Brother Wagenmaker. Thank you. 1 is before you. Those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same sign. That is adopted.
Recommendation number 2, that Synod thank the statistician for her faithful and excellent service to the churches.
Number 2 is before you. Those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same sign. That is adopted.
Recommendation.
Excuse
yes.
me, Mr. Reporter.
Sorry.
Mrs. Luth, we do want to thank you for your service to the churches, your service to the Federation. I personally want to thank you because I'm a numbers geek, and I think you are too. So I appreciate all your statistical analysis. It does help us to see our comings and goings, help us to understand what's happening in our ministries from a particular point of view. So thank you very, very much for your diligent, precise work that serves us so well. Thank you. Reporter.
Recommendation 3, that Synod remind the churches to be diligent in submitting their statistical data annually and responding promptly to the statistician.
Number 3 is before you. Those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same sign. That is adopted.
Recommendation 4, that Synod instruct the statistician to implement a statistical category for single church members defined as adult professing members who are unmarried. Would you like me to read the grounds?
Would you read the ground, please?
Ground A, counting singles in each congregation will reduce confusion over the definition of family and allow for elder visit ratios to be calculated from proposed synodical agenda page 50. Ground B, knowing the number of singles in a church will also allow for a more accurate snapshot of the demographics of a congregation, also from proposed synodical agenda page 50. May I make a comment to that, Mr. Chairman?
You may.
Before we get into discussion. We had a very helpful discussion with the statistician. She joined our advisory committee, and that was very helpful, particularly on these next items, because she is making some suggestions in her report. This was one of them, and trying to develop some more statistical data for our churches. We wrestled with this question, and I want to be clear what the intention of the advisory committee is in making this recommendation. This is, first of all, a statistical category, so we are not intending this to make any theological statements. Secondly, the statistician has the understanding, and we have the understanding as a committee, that this is a temporary category so that she can continue to do her work going forward to the next synod, but that she has the understanding that she may make recommendations to this very point to bring clarity to the next synod, so we can have a fuller discussion about this particular category. So this is a temporary measure for practicality to allow her to carry out her work.
All right, thank you for that explanation. Number 4 is before you. Yes, Mr. First Clerk.
Just to offer perfection in the grounds, it says proposed synodical agenda. If we could change the word proposed to provisional.
Yes, we can. Yes.
Happy birthday, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Will this have any impact on askings?
Does the reporter have an answer to that question?
That's one of the challenges with this particular suggestion, and it's also it's something that our statistician is very conscientious about and concerned about. So she's hoping to bring some clarity to that very question. She knows it has implications. We know it has implications. We're not exactly sure the extent of those implications, however.
I think the answer to your question is, at this point, the answer is no. That's what I'm hearing. At this point, the answer is no.
But that's why she would like, and since we, keep in mind, Mr. Chairman, keep in mind that we passed yesterday from the stated clerk's report an addition to her responsibilities in the synodical procedures, that she is able now to bring recommendations. And this will be one of them that will come before our body so that we can have a fuller discussion about those things.
All right, thank you. Yes, Brother Ford.
Yes, thank you. Just a point of a question for information. Is the desire when we're counting, I realize that there was confusion before what we described a family, and this might be trying to relieve the situation where churches were wanting to count widows or widowers. Is that what's going on here? Like, we want people living, I have a 20-year-old daughter who's still living at home. Is she counted in this? Or is it 18 years old? Do we just want a statistic of the number of single adults? Is that, what age do we start counting? Or are we counting adults that are no longer living in their parents' home?
Do we have an answer to that, Mr. Reporter?
So it's obviously going to be up to the churches to determine which members of theirs are going to fit properly in this category. That's not the statistician's responsibility, nor it is the responsibility of Synod or this advisory committee. We're trying to give some basic direction for the statistician and for the churches to help with this category. It's about the best I can say.
All right, thank you. Yes, State Clerk.
Previous speaker said is not quite accurate. This body determined the definition of a family, and I think this body ought to determine the definition of a single. Because if we don't, the number is going to be meaningless, because different people are going to have different definitions.
Thank you, Mr. State Clerk. I see Brother Donovan rising to speak. Is there a motion to grant him the privilege of the floor? It's supported. Those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That's adopted. Brother Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and brothers. I'm in favor of moving in this direction. I planted this seed many years ago when Mrs. Luth became the statistician that we need to do this. I've worked with singles for many years. My concern with the way this is written, and I don't know that we need to solve it today because we've been told this is temporary, but I want to put this before the body. And that is adult professing members who are unmarried, that still leaves a category of single Christians in a marriage with an unbeliever, and they are still unidentified. My high-level thinking on this is if we disengage the family definition from the household definition and make household the overarching genus, and we have family households where there's two believers, whether that's married or parent with child in the household, and singles who are either unmarried, or we could even categorize them as not married to another believer. That catches them all. Living on their own as a household apart from their parents. I think this idea catches all these little pieces. I don't want to edit this from the floor, but my vision from long ago was how do we identify these single believers in a marriage with an unbeliever, and hopefully a temporary situation, they become a family household, but currently they're a single household. So I'm not going to speak against this, but I don't think it's fully formed, and if I can put this in the ear of the statistician, if she's the one who's going to bring the recommendations, that's how I would like to see it, but I'm not going to press the body for it.
All right, thank you, Brother Donovan. We'll go over here to Brother Vermeer.
Mr. Chairman, the thoughts of the previous speaker stimulated me a little bit more here, but it's kind of interesting to me that in the recommendation that we're saying, well, we're not going to do any defining, but we did. We said a single is defined as an adult professing member. So we have done some defining. The one thing I was going to say is that if I think about a single adult, I'm thinking about somebody 18 or older. Now, the only thing is, you got that issue about what if you have a situation where somebody is, who's married but married to somebody who's not a believer. I don't know how many times that's going to be an issue, but I'm going to throw this out. I'm going to make a motion to amend this recommendation, if I may.
You may.
And to say that single church members defined as adult professing members 18 or older who are unmarried.
Your motion is to add the words 18 or older between the words members and who.
Correct.
So it reads adult professing members 18 or older who are unmarried.
Yes, sir.
Is that amendment supported? It is supported. On the amendment to add the words 18 or older. I see no one rising to speak to the amendment. Those in favor of the amendment adding the words 18 or older, please say, oh, excuse me, Brother Weiss.
I speak against this. I just think this is unnecessary. We're all adults here. I think we have some wisdom, or we can just apply this to those in our context that we realize this is a single, this is not. There could be a 35-year-old disabled adult who is still living at home with his or her parents, and I don't think that we would, with wisdom, categorize that person as a single, but rather part of the household in which they live. I think that the more we try to overly define this and not just rely on some just common sense wisdom, we just get ourselves in these corners and we can't get out. So I speak against the amendment.
Thank you, brother. Yes, on the amendment.
As a parent of a senior last year, I would infer that this would mean that during his senior year in high school, the day he turned 18, he reaches a new category. And I don't think that's the spirit of it, but that's the logistics of it.
Thank you. Brother Vanderwoord on the amendment.
We need to have this category very clear
for the statistical information to be useful, Mr. Chairman. If it is not clear and each church can pick and choose, then the statistical analysis is useless to us. This needs to be a clear category that is applied in the same way in every church.
Thank you. Brother Marquesi, and then Brother Godfrey.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, then, okay, I'm wondering, what are we analyzing? What's our end goal? Because I have 10 widows who meet that category. Above 18, they're all over 70. Do they get counted in this? Is that the number we're looking for? I mean, they would, with this amendment, they qualify.
Yes, you are correct.
But I don't know why we're looking for what we're qualifying.
All right, thank you. Brother Godfrey.
Mr. Chairman, I'm feeling very ill-defined right now. But I think for statistical purposes, if we're going to make this a temporary category that we're changing in 2 years, I don't think it needs to be so well-defined right now, because if we change the category and parse it out in a couple of years, the statistics we've gathered in the intervening time won't really be comparable with what we come up with later. So I think if we come up with a working definition now that we can clarify at the next synod, the statistics that we gather will still need refining next time anyway. And so I don't think a whole lot will be lost if we have a general definition churches can apply and then have a more specific definition. So I'd speak in favor.
All right, on the amendment to add the words 18 or, yes, no, Brother Pauls? I'll give him just a minute. We're on the amendment to add the words 18 or older. Yes, Brother Luth on the amendment. Brother Pauls, you wish to speak?
Yes, I do.
Okay, then Chairman of the committee.
Yes, I think the discussion illustrates the challenge that our committee was faced with in terms of precisely defining single. And that involved questions of, we didn't discuss the matter of age. I think it's commonly accepted that 18 is probably the definition of adult. But with respect to single, we realize there's a difference between an 18-year-old girl living at home or boy living at home and someone that's independent outside of the home. We also wrestled with the question of the categorization of a Christian member who is married to an unbeliever. And that gets us into theological definitions. You know, 1 Corinthians says that the unbelieving husband is sanctified by the believing wife, vice versa. And so to avoid those complications, we opted for a rather simple definition in the hope that if there is need for greater clarification, that would come by way of recommendations and a more well thought out plan of defining this more specifically. But this discussion really illustrates the reason for a tentative definition for the sake of the statistician's work going forward. And she can gather that information. If it needs to be modified, that can be done at a later level, at a different level. But this does need to be thought out very carefully. And we didn't judge that would be a profitable exercise at this body at this point.
Okay, thank you. Chairman of the committee, now Brother Luth.
I move to cease debate.
Motion to cease debate is before us. Is that supported? It is supported. Those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same sign. That is adopted. The amendment is before you to add the words 18 or older after the word members and before the word who. Those in favor. Oh, you weren't on the amendment, though. No, okay. Those in favor of the amendment, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Aye. I judge that's been defeated. Number 4 is before you. And brother.
I speak against this for the purpose, with the reason that it is unclear. Does this catch widows? Does this catch young people who are at home? Does this catch our disabled? What is the precise category we're looking to count? When we count someone or a group of peoples, it's important to have that category well defined. If this came to our church, we wouldn't know who to put down for this in terms of a single person. And I believe that then we would have an incorrect or an inaccurate statistical numbers. So I speak against this.
Thank you. Our brother over here.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make an amendment to number 4.
You may.
Because I'll have to be one of those people providing the statistics, so I have a vested interest in clarity. I would like to add the words "who are unmarried" and add after that, "and not living with their parents."
The amendment is at the end of the sentence, after the word unmarried, to add the words "and not living with their parents." Is there support for that amendment? I hear support. Questions on the amendment to add the words "and not living with their parents"? Mr. State Clerk?
May I speak?
You may. We'll do it right. Thank you. You can speak. It's Friday. You can speak.
This amendment and the previous amendment are doing committee work on the floor. If you allow me to make a motion, I move that this be recommitted, that they can come up with a definition over the coffee break and not do committee work on the floor.
Thank you. The motion is to I ruled that I was incorrect when I said that we couldn't make a motion. And then I was corrected on that. So I'll write an overture. Don't worry, guys. I'll write an overture. Okay. The motion is to refer this to committee. Is that supported? It is supported to recommit. Those in favor of recommitting, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same sign. Aye. I judge that that has been adopted. And and we're committing number 4. Just number 4 is being recommitted to the committee. Not committee 4. No, not committee 4. Just recommendation 4 is recommitted. No, you're good, brother. We've recommitted number 4 only. I'm going to go on to number... For the purpose of coming up with a definition. Going on to number 5, recommendation 5.
Number 5, that Synod instruct the statistician to create 2 categories for ministers in the archival directory. A, current ministers, including ministers emeritus, and B, former ministers, including deceased, released, and deposed.
Number 5 is before you. Those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same sign. That is adopted.
Number 6, that Synod instruct the statistician to provide same church analysis to individual churches upon request.
Number 6 is before you. Those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same sign. That is adopted.
Recommendation 7, that Synod encourage the churches to contact the statistician regarding any hard copies of the 5th, February 2001, and or the 7th, February 2003 editions of the URCNA directory.
Number 7 is before you. Those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same sign. That is adopted.
And recommendation 8, that Synod remind the churches that statistician works under the oversight of the convening consistory of Synod.
Number 8 is before you. Those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same sign. That is adopted. Thank you, Mr. Yes, Brother Russ.
Mr. Chair, I know it's Friday and I'm slow on the uptake, but I don't know what to provide same church analysis. Is that just a typo? Is it some?
No, I thought the same thing because, I'm a Luddite, but no, that's a technical term.
Okay.
Yeah.
I am just slow on the uptake. Fine.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, thank you. Brother Dorn.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, may I have your permission just as a point of information for the advisory committee about point number 4?
I'm going to ask you to direct that to them personally. So rather than direct it
I
on
believe it would be helpful to the body.
It's been recommitted to that committee. We're not going to do committee work on the floor. I'm going to ask you to bring it directly to that committee.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, I'm sorry, brother.
I'd like to rescind our decision to recommit. And if I may explain why.
Hold. You'd like to rescind the decision to recommit. The intention is to propose a new discussion on the matter. Did you vote with the prevailing side?
No.
That's a yes or no question.
Did
you vote with the prevailing side?
I did not vote.
Then you are not eligible to rescind.
Okay.
Thank you. Moving on. We're going to turn our attention to Committee 4B. 4B, and take that up once again. We were partially through that. We're going to continue to work through that. And once again, I will pass the chair to our vice chairman.
Thank you, brother. If the committee men could come forward. Advisory Committee 4B, Advisory Report 4B is before us. We are at number 41, I believe. Are you ready?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That Synod exceed to 1741 with its ground that in Article 26 change the word meet to convene in the first and, for consistency, second sentence that it reads, deem it necessary that a class is convened earlier than the regular time determined.
Thank you. Recommendation 41 is before us. Any discussion? All in favor of recommendation 41, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. It is adopted with 2/3 majority. Recommendation 42.
That Synod exceed to 1742 with its ground that in Article 9 delete the word supervising so that it reads upon approval by his council with the concurring advice of classis.
Recommendation 42. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Adopted with 2/3 majority. 43.
That Synod exceed to 1743 with its grounds that in Article 12 and 41 change the words confessing members to communicant members so that they read only male communicant members who meet the biblical requirements for office and signified and sealed to the children of communicant members in good standing.
Recommendation 43. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same. Adopted, 2/3 majority. 44.
That Synod exceed to 1744 with its perfected ground that in Article 15 change the words shall ordinarily meet every month to shall ordinarily meet at least once a month, and the last sentence so that it reads the deacon shall ordinarily meet at least once a month to transact the business.
Recommendation 44. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same. Adopted. 2/3 majority. 45.
That this be Synod's answer to Overture 18.
All those in favor, say aye.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Give me just a moment to process this. Mr. Chairman, the motion we just adopted deals with Article 15, and Overture 18 refers to two different articles in the church order, both 15 and 21. I believe this is our answer to Overture 18.1, but I don't think it answers 18.2, unless I'm mistaken.
Mr. Chairman, our understanding was that the principle applied to 18.1 is also the same principle that would apply to 18.2, retaining the word ordinarily.
Thank you. Recommendation 45 is before us. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Adopted. 46.
Did you want to call for a negative, Mr. Chairman?
I didn't actually.
Okay.
Did you want to vote?
No.
Okay. All those opposed? My apologies.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Hearing none. Adopted.
Crickets.
46, thank you.
That Synod not exceed to 1745, that in Article 40 change the title from catechetical preaching to confessional preaching.
Thank you. Recommendation 46 is a motion not to exceed to 1745 in the overture. Is there discussion? Brother Niemeyer.
May I speak from here, Mr. Chairman? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know that the understanding of the word catechetical has a range. Well, there's at least two different ways we can take that word catechetical. One is with regard to method, one is with regard to content. The intention here is to address the second of those, actually probably both of them, but more the second of those. The content of the preaching being more than from the Heidelberg Catechism, although it does have the priority, but also including both the Belgic Confession and the Canons of Dort. The overture believes that the word confessional, in terms of content, more accurately describes what is in that article. With regard to the method question, catechetical, according to the Oxford English Dictionary, means relating to religious teaching by means of questions and answers. Now, while the questions and answers are the basis of our sermons, it is not technically catechetical at the point when we're preaching it. It is declarative. And so I think with both the method and the content, the word confessional more accurately describes what's going on. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Can I speak as a committee member to that?
Yes, you may.
So, Mr. Chairman, kategeo in the Greek means teaching. And catechetical preaching then also can be a preaching or a teaching sermon. And if we understand historically the Tweede Dienst, the second service, was normally an applicatio or an explanational preaching service, then historically catechetical is a much better term. And then we can teach our people the meaning of these beautiful terms than confessional. And so I think that undoes what we've just heard.
Thank you. My brother.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to speak in favor of the recommendation not to exceed to 17.45. As was mentioned earlier, that catechetical can be both the content and method, and I think that captures, you can preach catechetically from the Belgic, you can preach catechetically from the canons, and prior to the writing of the Heidelberg Catechism, catechetical preaching was doctrinal preaching. And so I think that catechetical, given the historicity of that term, I think we ought to retain it. And so I support the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. Brother Coleman.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'll leave this up to your determination if this is a perfection or an amendment. But at the end of ground C, to add the words of the teaching service of corporate worship, to make sure we're clear on what we're talking about here, that this is not just a service, but it's a service of corporate worship.
So the words teaching service of corporate worship?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
I'll ask the reporter if you think that's a perfection.
We would accept that as a perfection.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Do we have that, Brother First Clerk?
Teaching service of?
Could you repeat that? Of corporate worship.
Thank you.
I too speak in favor of the recommendation because in addition to the grounds already listed, I think the article title and the historical understanding of catechism preaching also reflects the Appendix 1 with regards to catechism preaching courses being involved in a thoroughly reformed theological education. So I speak in favor of the recommendation.
Thank you, Brother Wagonmaker.
Speak in favor of the recommendation. I hope all my preaching's confessional. And so that gets at another misleading aspect of the adjective of confessional that catechetical helps address. So I speak for the recommendation.
Thanks for your confession. Pardon me.
Call for the question.
Thank you. Is support for that? All those in favor of calling the question, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. The question has been called. Everyone has sat down. I think they were all going to call the question. All right, so the question is before us. As perfected, we have recommendation 46, not to exceed to 17.45. All those in favor of not exceeding, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Aye. It is adopted. Recommendation 47.
That Synod accede to 1746 with its ground that in Article 22 change the word congregation to church so that it reads when a church is organized within the Federation.
Recommendation 47. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same. It is adopted with 2/3 majority. 48.
That Synod accede to 1747 with its ground that in Article 9 change the title to the term of service.
Recommendation 48. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same. Adopted with 2/3 majority. Recommendation 49.
That Synod accede to 1748 with its ground that in Article 26 and Article 28 add the article "the" to the title so that it reads "the classis" and "the Synod."
Recommendation 49 is before us. I would like to pass the chair to the first clerk.
One moment, please.
Let me know when I'm not chair.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I would speak against this recommendation. I prefer to leave things as they are and just have the words classis and synod. I think we've had the discussion and this body has spoken with regard to being too definitive when we were defining classis. And I think these additions of the word "the" makes it too definitive and sounds potentially too pompous in my estimation. So I would tend to go in this situation, in this scenario, with the adage, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I would like to leave it as it is, and I don't like the fix that's proposed, speaking against the recommendation.
Any other discussion regarding recommendation 49? All those in favor of adopting recommendation 49, say aye. Aye. All those opposed to adopting recommendation 49, say aye. Aye. Judge, that's been defeated. Return the chair to Vice Chairman.
Thank you. Recommendation 50.
That Synod not accede to 1749 with its ground that in Article 32 delete the words "and the sacraments" in the third sentence so that it reads, "being declared a minister of the word among the United Reformed Churches." If I may, Mr. Chairman, a word of explanation.
Yes, you may.
In our advisory committee, we came to an agreement that the preferred title we would like to see used throughout our documentation would be Minister of the Word and Sacraments, but we believe proposing such a change was outside the scope of our work.
Thank you. Recommendation 50 is before us. Take note, it's a recommendation not to exceed to 17.49. Any discussion? All those in favor of recommendation 50, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. It is adopted. Recommendation 51.
That this be Synod's answer to 1763.
No, you probably should.
Okay. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same. Adopted. Recommendation 52.
That Synod accede to 1750 with its grounds that in Appendix 131 insert the Oxford comma after the word Reformation, add the word "and" before the words URCNA Federational History so that it reads courses which cover the ancient, medieval, Reformation, and modern church and URCNA Federational History.
Thank you. Recommendation 52. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, same. Adopted, 2/3 majority. 53.
That Synod accede to 1751 with its ground that in Appendix 22B change the words "and the successful completion of the exam will be certified to the other consistories of the Federation, to who must make known that the licentiate has sustained his licensure exam."
Recommendation 53. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same. Adopted, 2/3 majority. 54.
That Synod accede to 1752 with its ground that in Appendix 2.3b, change the words so that it reads, the oral exam should investigate the following specific areas.
Recommendation 54 is before us. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. It is adopted, and just let me clarify, thank you for the help of our brother beside me. We are now in the appendix, and we are not requiring a 2/3 majority. So these are well adopted. 55, please.
That Synod accede to 1753 with its ground that in Appendix 3.2a, change the words request a meeting of classes for this exam to invite classes to participate in a candidacy exam so that it reads the prospective candidates consistory must invite classes to participate in a candidacy exam.
Recommendation 55. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same. Adopted. 56.
That Synod accede to 1754 with its ground that in Appendix 4.2a, delete the words exceptional case, add the words shall ordinarily before the words be waived, and change the word conducting to hearing so that it reads, A, if the ordination exam would occur in the same classes in which the candidacy exam was sustained, then the ordination exam shall ordinarily be waived by the delegates hearing the candidacy exam.
Recommendation 56. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Thank you. Wake up. Adopted. Recommendation 57.
That Synod accede to 1755 with its ground that in Appendix 4.2a, add this final sentence, this shall apply to both a fully or partially sustained exam.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same. Adopted. 58.
That Synod accede to 1756 with its grounds that in Appendix 4.3.3, delete the words concerning and prospective so that it reads the history and content of the three forms of unity, the candidate's willingness to subscribe to them.
Recommendation 58. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same. Adopted. 59.
That Synod accede to 1757 with its grounds that in Appendix 5.1, change the words the examinee to the minister to be examined so that it reads one from the minister to be examined and one from the sponsoring consistory.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same. Adopted. 60.
That Synod accede to 1758 with its ground that in Appendix 5.2a, change the word calling to sponsoring so that it reads the sponsoring consistory must invite classes.
Recommendation 60. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same. Adopted. 61.
That Synod accede to 1759 with its ground that in Appendix 5.2b, change the word examinee to minister so that it reads the minister is to preach a sermon.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same. Adopted. 62.
That Synod accede to 1760 with its grounds that in Appendix 5.2.1, second option, change the word examinee to minister to be examined, the word examinee to ministers, and recommending to sponsoring so that it reads one from the minister to be examined, one from the minister's consistory, and one from the sponsoring consistory.
Recommendation 62. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman?
Brother Luth.
Perfection, sponsoring should be a lowercase s.
Can you point out where you're seeing that?
Bottom here.
Second last word.
That should be lowercase.
Okay. All right. All right, that's a perfection. Thank you. Take note. All those in favor of this recommendation as perfected, say aye. 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 We are nearing perfection in this church order, are we not? All those opposed, say the same. It's adopted. 63.
That Synod accede to 1761 with its ground that in Appendix 5.2a and b, second option, change the word recommending to sponsoring.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same. Adopted. 64, please.
That Synod accede to 1762 with its grounds that in Appendix 533 delete the words concerning and change the words prospective candidates to ministers so that it reads the history and content of the three forms of unity, the minister's willingness to subscribe to them.
Number 64 is before us. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, same. Adopted. Number 65.
That Synod not accede to 1764.
Okay, recommendation 65, a motion not to exceed. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, if you would allow me just a bit of latitude on this one.
We'll see.
The ground is the proposed changes do not follow the commonly accepted practice for capitalization of common and proper nouns. I do not believe that is true, Mr. Chairman, and if you will allow me, I'd like to deal with the words that are not capitalized. Not to capitalize the word minister. In our own forms book, when we ordain a minister, it is consistently not capitalized, except in the title, of course, where it belongs. The lowercase minister of the word is called and commanded to preach the word of God. Consistently not capitalized. The same is true for elder. In our form for ordination of elders, the council has made known to you the names of our brothers who were chosen to the office of lowercase elder and lowercase deacon. The office of lowercase elder is based on the kingship of Christ. The work of the lowercase elders is the ruling in the name of Christ. It is consistently lowercase. The same is true with the deacons. The office of lowercase deacon is based on. The work of the lowercase deacons is based on. It is consistently lowercase. With regard to the word office bearer, in the introduction to the creeds and confessions, page 139, if you're wondering about the book, it says, he rules and governs his church by the word and spirit, not by the dictates of men. Therefore, the authority of the creeds and confessions to which all of our lowercase office bearers subscribe is fully agreeing. It is lowercase. That is the common use of that term. The words chairman, clerk, and federation don't show up in the Forms and Prayers book, but there would be no reason to capitalize those. It is common to have those lowercase. With regard to church, church is lowercase. In the Apostles' Creed, page 148. I believe a holy Catholic lowercase church. In the Nicene Creed, it is also lowercase. In the Belgic Confession, Articles 27, 28, and 29, it is consistently lowercase. The word baptism. I'm not going to read just the citations now, not the actual text, but Belgic Confession 34, the form for baptism 1, form for baptism 2. These are all lowercase. This is the standardly accepted way to not capitalize these terms. With regard to those that are suggested to be capitalized, beginning with consistory, classis, and synod, in our own form of subscription, we promised to neither publicly nor privately propose or defend the same, either by preaching, writing, or teaching, until we have revealed these sentiments to the capital consistory, capital classis, capital synod. Later in that sentence, we will submit to the judgment of the capital consistory, capital classis, capital synod. Further, if at any time the capital consistory, capital classis, capital synod, this is our usage, Mr. Chairman, this is the common usage. With regard to the word council, in the ordination form, it says, Congregation of Jesus Christ, the uppercase council has made known to you the names of the brothers. Now, there may be a counterexample in Belgic Confession, but that just shows we are free to determine what our practice is going to be. The word diaconate does not occur anywhere in the church order at this point. It may never in the future, so I'm not going to address that, but I would suggest it remain capitalized. Church order is the title of a document. We capitalize titles of documents. For example, in our prayers, the book of prayers, the preface to that, it says these prayers are not obligatory but are voluntary. While our capital church order requires the use of forms, that is our common practice. It is normal to capitalize the title of a document. Lord's Supper, again, I'm going to be more quick here. In the prayers book, in the Heidelberg Catechism 28 and 29, Lord's Supper is always capitalized, as it should be. And the use of word in minister of the capital word. It is that way in the ordination form a number of times. It is that way in Belgic Confession 31. This is the standard practice, to capitalize the words that are suggested to be capitalized, to not capitalize those suggested not capitalized. The grounds suggest that this is not the commonly accepted practice, is simply incorrect. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman,
Thank you,
may I?
brother. Brother reporter.
Perhaps a bit of clarification. When we refer to our ground, we are not referring primarily to our own internal practice among our documentation. We are referring rather to the commonly accepted practices for publishing and editing outside of our own federation. So perhaps a bit of clarification on our ground.
Thank you, brother. Stated clerk.
May I speak?
You've already. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. You may.
Our church order has inconsistencies in capitalization, and I want to explain why that is. In the English language, we capitalize proper nouns but not common nouns. In the German language, both proper and common nouns are capitalized. In the 19th century, there was a considerable German influence in the CRC, even in German-speaking classes that produced several influential leaders in the CRC in the first half of the 20th century. As a result of the influence of the German language, German heritage of some, and the ignorance of those for whom English was a second language, many common nouns were capitalized in the CRC documents as they transitioned from Dutch and German to English. Evidence of that tradition is found among us in that consistory is capitalized in most places in our church order, even though we don't capitalize council, classis, synod, or diaconate. We have used lowercase for consistory in some recent changes to the church order and the appendices, which were also adopted later. In the overture, the overture says that all governmental bodies are capitalized, but the rules of grammar say that the names of government bodies are capitalized when they are exact names. Do not capitalize such general terms as the following: the state legislature, the latest department meeting, and so forth. That's from a grammar book. From the AP Style Guide, it says all words that are capitalized when they are part of proper names should be lowercase when they are used in the plural or do not refer to a specific existing body. Here are a few examples. All states have, except Nebraska, have a state senate. Senate is not capitalized. The town does not have a fire department. Fire department is not capitalized. The bill requires a city council to provide matching funds. City council is not capitalized. The president will address the lower house of the New York and New Jersey legislatures. Legislatures is not capitalized because it's not referring to a specific one. Now the word consistory, classis, and synod and council in the church order never refer to a specific governing body. They always refer to the governing body in general, not to a specific one. So all of those words, according to the rules of grammar, should not be capitalized.
Could you clarify, are you speaking for or against the motion?
I am speaking in favor of the committee recommendation not to accede to the overture.
Can I speak to that, Mr. Chairman? It was the advisory committee's thought that we'd be making no current changes to the capitalization in the church order. So where the minister of the word, capital W word, that would remain capital W word throughout the church order. We do recognize that there is an inconsistency in the capitalization, but to accede to the recommendation as it's stated, we were not in agreement that all those words listed here that are to be capitalized should be capitalized.
Thank you.
And just as a committee
Brother
member,
Bezoin, yep.
Yeah, very quickly, we looked at 4 different church orders. The newer the addition of the church order, the more it was like what can I just say what Reverend Pontier said? Is that okay?
Go ahead.
And the older it was more along the lines of what ours is. And we also thought as we move forward into the future, and I'm hoping that maybe all or our church will write an overture that we would have a publication board. I think it's time, because we shouldn't do this again, right? This is not helpful. But that we would have somebody somewhere that anything that we put out publicly is going to be edited properly. So to what we're saying here, if we're going to move into the future, we think it's better to go the modern way, but we don't feel like it's our job as a committee to do that now. So that doesn't mean these things can't be done later.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Brother.
Speaking to a former speaker's point, our close brothers in the CANRC, their new revision of their church order does not follow our capitalization guide as recommended here for us. So that was a weighty argument that our close brothers and sisters with history that's really similar to ours does not follow what was recommended initially.
Thank you. I see Brother Luth.
Motion to cease debate.
Motion to cease debate. I did have my brother to my left on my list as well. Motion to cease debate, is it supported? All those in favor say aye. Opposed, same. Debate will be ceased. Go ahead, brother.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A previous speaker said the more modern, the more new the church order was, the change became less capitalization. In our previous discussion, we talked about the word catechetical, and the argument that carried the day is that's a historic term. Please, let's hold on to our history. The older, the better. I would make the same argument, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Recommendation 65, not to exceed to 17.64, is before us. All those in favor of not exceeding, say aye. Opposed, same sign. The motion is adopted.
Mr. Chairman, this concludes the work of Advisory Committee 4.
Yes, and you are free to sit down.
Thank you.
And before I hand the chair over to the brother chairman with a capital C, let me just say, it's obviously true what your wife has said, that you sleep with a church order under your pillow.
You are correct.
So we're very thankful for all of your work.
Thank you,
Mr.
Brother
Chairman, point of inquiry. There's one question in the provisional agenda that was not covered, number 63.
It was covered. It was referred to, I can't remember where. It was lumped in with one. We made a decision, and then the following recommendation was this answers 63.
All right, thank you.
51. Thank you.
All right, very good. Thank you, brothers, and if I may just say thank you for taking the time to work through that. We appreciate the wisdom of this body. I know it is very tedious and incredibly enjoyable, but thank you for taking the time to work through that. We thank you. At this point, we are going to turn our attention, let me check it's 9:30. We're going to turn our attention to Committee 7. Committee 7, Report D, and I believe that is entitled Revised. No, it's not entitled Revised, just 7D. All right, so brothers Folkerts and Engenberg will come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Similar to our previous report, I note that in light of the previous action of Synod on 3A, that we are now, the committee is now recommending something significantly different than items B and C for Overture 3. And I'm asked the chair if that requires the presentation of the mover of the overture, since it's significantly different.
I would agree with your interpretation of that, and so would invite, who was the
That would be
signer on
Mr. Stated
Overture
Clerk.
3? That would be our stated clerk on Overture 3. If you would like to address us, Mr. Stated Clerk, as the signatory on Overture 3.
Again, I would defer to the representatives of the church that brought the Overture 2 classes.
And that would be Brother Lee? You, yes, please, brother.
That would not, that would be
On
not.
Overture 3, who? Yeah, so that's okay, Brother Lee. Who brought the overture?
Elder Mark Vandermolen.
Then would you like to speak to this, Brother Vandermolen? You're not going to? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Brother Engenberg.
Mr. Chairman, our materials then are overtures 3 and 8, and the summary, the new summary of our report reads as follows. Overture 8 suggests the Church Order Appendix 7 should reflect the language and practice of the Church Order Articles 29 and 31 in a way that does not allow for the right of an individual appeal apart from his local consistory. And Overture 3D clarifies what happens when an adjudicating assembly sustains any specified errors of an appeal. So that's the content of this report.
Thank you.
Our recommendations are as follows. Recommendation 1, that Synod accede to Overture 8A with its grounds. And
I'm going to pause just a minute. You have a question, brother?
May I have the privilege of the floor? I was given it on this issue previously.
If you were given it on the issue previously, that continues.
Okay.
So, brother, you may continue.
I just want to clarify.
I'm sorry, the reporter, please read. Oh, no, please read letter A. Please read letter A.
so this is Overture 8, Section A, to amend Guideline 1, that is of this Appendix 7 of the Church Order, to amend Guideline 1 by adding the following words. The proposed additions are underlined. Number 1, appellant, an appeal may be made by a consistory, a classis, or an individual who is a member of a church within the federation. The appeal may be submitted to, by the appellant himself or by a representative. An individual member may only appeal a decision of his own consistory. However, any consistory or classis may appeal against a decision of any assembly of the federation.
Thank you, Mr. Reporter. Now, Brother Lee, you may speak.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to clarify. I don't want to get into the business of amending a summary, but I do believe the summary is overbroad. And as we've said before, we do not believe that this overture in any way infringes the individual right of appeal. So when the summary reads, Church Order Articles 29 and 31 in a way that does not allow for the right of an individual to appeal apart from his local consistory, I believe that's overbroad.
I'm going to pause you, brother.
Yeah.
The summary is not recorded in the Acts of Synod.
Yeah, I just want to be clear for this debate that the question at stake is to appeal another assembly apart from his local consistory. I just think it's valuable because I want it to be clear that if that would be received as a perfection perhaps by the, not to change it, but by the reporter of this advisory.
What is the perfection being suggested, Mr. Reporter?
It's a clarification of the summary, that's all.
To appeal another assembly apart from his local consistory. The decision of another assembly.
We will take note of that.
Thank you.
Brother DeRoy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I speak against this recommendation. We are on recommendation number 1, but I would direct the brothers, the body, to recommendation 7 at the end of this report. And if I may, Mr. Chairman, that Synod take note that passing changes to Church Order Appendix 7 means that Appendix B of our regulations for synodical procedure would no longer be in agreement. And I promise I am directing this to number 1, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
But I think we need to give considerable weight to what recommendation 7 notes. And my concern, Mr. Chairman, is that if we pass these other recommendations, we will then have in our Appendix 7 different language regarding appeals than we will have in our rules for synodical procedure. My concern is we don't have any appeals today, but perhaps at our next synod we might. And if we do, which rules will take precedence? Which rules will have the primary place in terms of how that appeal is dealt with, adjudicated, and so forth? And we don't do good service to our churches or to anybody who's appealing any decisions if we don't have our rules straight and have to go through all of that before we can actually deal with the issues that are at hand. So therefore, Mr. Chairman, I move to table this indefinitely.
It's been moved to table indefinitely, and it has been supported. The motion to table indefinitely is both debatable but not amendable. On the motion to table recommendation 1 indefinitely, anyone to speak
Mr.
on?
Chairman, can I
Reporter.
speak to that?
Reporter.
So I can speak to the concern related to our synodical rules of procedure versus the Appendix 7 changes. We spoke at length on this in our committee about whether to include that first or last, and we ultimately included it last in our report because we believe it prejudices the discussion of the overture, since the standard for passing this overture is at a simple majority, but changes to the rules of synodical procedure require 2/3. We thought that was unfair for the consideration of an overture. We do have additional things to say if they're counted as orderly by the chair, recommendations to fix that conflict and not leave confusion going forward. And so we have a little more to say on recommendation 7 that might help clarify that, but that was 7th for a reason.
I'm going to allow a little latitude with regard to the motion to table indefinitely, a little latitude. Brother Rosma.
So, just to be clear, we're...
Speak up.
Okay, so I would speak against the motion to table indefinitely because I think I have a way out, or a way forward for us to get this through and make it clear.
Okay, you're speaking against the motion to table indefinitely.
Yeah.
Anyone else on the motion to, Brother, I saw Brother Weiss first. I'm going to let Brother Weiss go first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and a very happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
I think I'm speaking against the motion to table indefinitely because this is another example of the tail wagging the dog. Appendix B of our synodical procedures is simply Appendix 7. If we change Appendix 7, how is this not just by default just changed? Clearly, our church order takes precedence over the appendix. The appendix takes precedent over the synodical procedures. I don't know why this is such a big deal to recognize that this would just follow suit if this is just a carbon copy of Appendix 7 and Appendix B of the synodical procedures. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Brother. Brother Miller.
Mr. Chairman, I would speak in favor of the motion to table indefinitely for the simple fact that changes to the regulations of synodical procedure follow a different path and have a higher threshold of necessity to be changed. It's not that we simply can change one and the other is just grafted in with it. We have to be very careful here. The possibility does still exist if we move forward without tabling indefinitely, then an appeal could come next time to Synod, and we're forced to try to understand how to approach that appeal from two different regulative principles, which it is impossible to do. So I speak in favor of the motion to table indefinitely.
Thank you. Mr. Reporter.
Just one more comment, brothers, related to that. Our committee also wrestled with the implications of doing nothing on this matter at this synod. I believe that tabling indefinitely would create as much or more confusion for two synods now failing to come to a proper conclusion on this matter. So I think that tabling indefinitely does not clarify or keep us from confusion. It actually creates as much confusion as it claims to solve.
Thank you, Mr. Reporter. On the motion to table indefinitely, Brother Kistler.
I oppose the motion to table indefinitely. If I might remind you of the commonly used statement, the perfect is the enemy of the good. And when we constantly require that something be perfect before we discuss it, you will never attain perfection. It's nice to try to get it, but it is better to have something good in place than to have nothing at all in place. And if you're worried about future appeals, it may be better to have something in place than to have nothing in place.
Thank you, Brother Kistler. On the motion to table indefinitely. Yes, Brother Lee.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to speak against the motion to table indefinitely. And if I may ask a point of information, it seems to me prefaced by a comment. It seems to me that when in 2018 we adopted this overture to make these changes to both the appendix and our synodical procedure appendix, or is it an appendix B?
Regulation.
Yeah. That was made explicit, and that both things were being changed in tandem or added to in tandem. It's clearly an oversight that neither one of the two overtures, to my understanding, that came before our assembly in this year, 3 or 8, addressed the matter of the appendix to the rules of regulations for synodical procedure. I'm wondering whether a friendly amendment, this is the question for information, might be provided to one or all of these recommendations or added to the recommendations by the advisory committee. I know that potentially raises the question of recommitting, but whether or not a friendly amendment might be added that would make that explicit, and we could then vote on that at the higher threshold of 2/3. But whether that simple change might be offered. So that's an argument. I would ask the question for information, but that's an argument against tabling indefinitely.
Thank you.
The question for information was whether or not the chairman might have some wisdom on that matter.
Any recommendation may be amended. That is my answer. Any recommendation may be amended, provided the body decides to do so.
Given that information from the chair, I would just augment my argument against the motion to table indefinitely by suggesting that we could amend any or all of these regulations to cover the concerned objection.
Thank you. Yeah, you're asking me a question that you're on the fly that I really need a little time to think about. I do not want to direct you in the wrong way. Any recommendation may be amended, but the amendment may not undermine the recommendation. And that is a determination that the chairman would make, whether the amendment undermines the recommendation. The chairman would rule on that, and the body is then free to challenge the ruling of the chair if they are dissatisfied, and the body then makes the decision as to whether or not it undermines the nature of the initial recommendation. That's a fuller answer to your question. I do not want to mislead you, Dr. Lee. Thank you, brother. I have a point of order. We have a motion on the floor. Yes? Right? Yes? Or to table this. Yes? And I think we're getting into the substance of the thing that is being asked to be tabled. Yes, but I was given a parliamentary inquiry. But I'm asking you, could we now vote on that? Okay, no one's called the question on it, so no, we're having discussion yet. On a motion to table indefinitely, it is debatable. So we're going to have debate until the debate ceases. I'm going to go with Brother Coleman.
Mr. Chairman, just a point of clarification. It's Friday, so I'm maybe just confused on where we are here. Are we tabling indefinitely just recommendation 1? Is that what we're doing here?
The motion before us is to table indefinitely recommendation 1 of Committee 7D.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go with Brother Vandermolen.
Mr. Chairman, the prior speaker pointed out that both Overture 3 and the Overture from Classis East overlooked this significant conflict that may occur if these are adopted. And I actually think that that's an argument in favor of tabling this indefinitely so that both writers of overtures can consider bringing an overture that takes into account the changes that would be needed for the regulations as well at the different voting thresholds. So I believe, and I speak in favor of the motion to table indefinitely.
Speaking in favor of the motion, Brother Luth.
Mr. Chairman, did I miss the memo that says if we say happy birthday, we're bribing you somehow? I move that we cease debate.
This is my birthday present. Parliamentary procedure, that's my birthday present. Yes, brother.
I move that we cease debate.
Now the motion to cease debate has been, and is that supported? Those in favor of ceasing debate, please say aye. Aye. Oppose the same sign. Aye. That has been adopted. I had Brother DeRoy on my queue, and I assume you brothers are stepped back because you did not wish to speak to this amendment. So, Brother DeRoy, you were on this one. I can't tell when you're how far back you are. So, Brother DeRoy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not very good at this, but I'd like to clarify. My motion was intended to table all of this indefinitely, not just recommendation 1, but all of this. And I did not make that clear. I don't know if I need to state that differently, but that was my intention, to table this entire report, all of these recommendations indefinitely. Can I do that?
At this point, I ruled that this was for number 1 only. And so I'm going to continue with that ruling unless challenged. If anyone in the body desires, once we handle this matter, any other motion can be made regarding any or all of the rest of this report. Does that answer the question? Okay. Brother Vanderhorst.
Mr. Chairman, I speak against the motion to table indefinitely. I want to draw our attention back to the comments of the committee reporter, just echo that and affirm that that the confusion that will result and the potential challenge and conflict that will result from not dealing with this at this synod is something that we should be very cautious about. And we have had now quite some time with these overtures, and not just these 2 overtures, but the substance of these overtures dating back to our previous synod. So we've had a lot of deliberation. We've begun to move in a direction, a clear direction, and we don't have weighty enough reasons to table this. So speak against the motion.
Thank you. The question has been called on the motion to table recommendation 1 indefinitely.
Mr. Chairman, in light of your request, I am challenging the chair because I had understood it as being for the entire document.
Okay, the chair has been challenged with regard to the ruling that this was for recommendation 1 only. I'm going to pass the chair to our vice chairman.
So the chair has been challenged with regard to the ruling. All those in favor of upholding the ruling of the chair that this refers only to recommendation 1, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. I believe that the chair has not been upheld.
Thank you. Thank you, brothers. Before us is a motion to table indefinitely the entire Advisory Committee 7D report. The motion before us is to table indefinitely the entire Advisory Committee 7D report. Those in favor of that motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same sign?
Aye.
I judge that motion has been defeated. Number 1 is before you. It's division of the House. All right. Those in favor of tabling the recommendations indefinitely, please raise your hand. Those opposed, please raise your hand. motion to table indefinitely was defeated. We have before us recommendation 1 of Committee 7D. Anyone to speak to it? I'm going to go with Brother Bielsma first.
Mr. Chairman, because we have a carbon copy, because Appendix 7 of the Church Order is an exact copy of Appendix B of the Synodical Rules of Procedure, and because changing one may cause the two to be in conflict, I'd like to make the motion that any changes during this report to Appendix 7 of the Church Order also be applied to Appendix B of the Synodical Rules of Procedure, and therefore require a 2/3 majority vote.
That has been moved and supported. Would you say it one more time for us, please, brother? Listen carefully, brothers.
I'm making a motion that for the purpose of this report, any changes made to Appendix 7 of the Church Order also be applied to Appendix B of the Synodical Regulations, and therefore require a 2/3 vote.
That has been moved and supported, and I'm going to accept that amendment.
Is the first clerk okay?
Is the first clerk got it?
Mr. Chairman, can I make a question about...
Make sure the first clerk has it first.
Motion is made and supported that for the purpose of this report of the Advisory Committee, any changes to Appendix 7 of the Church Order also apply to Appendix B of the Regulations for Synodical Procedure and therefore require a 2/3 majority.
Right. And Mr. Reporter.
So here's my question, because we spent some time with this in the committee and we had similar questions. My suggestion to the chair for clarification is this. Would we make one 2/3 vote so that all of the changes are covered, or do we have to vote 2/3 each time?
The second of those options.
Okay, and so my suggestion is that creates, this was the consensus of our committee was that creates an unfair threshold for Overture 8 because they're two separate questions. So I guess that means I'm speaking against the recommendation because I think it would make more sense to pass the overture and then the mover, for instance, could make almost an identical motion that would be those changes that have been adopted by Overture 8 now apply in one 2/3 vote for the sake of, expedience.
Speaking against. Thank you. Brother Seeley was up next.
Speak in favor of this motion. In 2018, when this appendix was approved, it was only originally an appendix to the Rules of Synodical Procedure. And part of that process was to add this appendix to the church order. Now, as I read the agenda for the acts of Synod 2018, the appendix itself was only approved by a simple majority, and and then it was subsequently approved by a 2/3 majority. But a lot of the argument yesterday that resulted in our committee being recommitted was that everything in the appendix was only approved by a simple majority and the tail is wagging the dog. But there's a conflict here because they're both together and because this was only originally part of the regulations for synodical procedure, which required 2/3 majority. So I don't think it prejudices the overture. We need to deal with this, and we need to deal with this definitively, and I think 2/3 majority covers all the issues and does not prejudice against this overture. So I speak in favor of this motion.
Thank you, Brother Seeley. Brother Vanderwoord.
I have a question. What is the dog? So we heard that an overture changing the church order to bring it in line with an appendix was the tail wagging the dog. Is the appendix of the church order under our rules of procedure requiring a 2/3 vote? Or is the appendix the primary document? I don't know which is the dog. I'm asking, where's the dog in this, Mr. Chairman?
I cannot answer that question. Brother Barnes, did you no longer wish to speak? Brother Luth wishes to speak.
Motion to cease debate.
All right. That has been moved and supported. Those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Oppose the same sign. Aye. I judge that is carried by 2/3. I have on my list the two speakers in the center aisle. First you, brother.
Mr. Chairman, as the one who introduced the phrase, the tail wagging the dog is the church order. The church order is most significant, it takes priority, and everything else flows out of that.
Thank you. And brother.
Just speaking to that last comment, Mr. Chairman, you mentioned you weren't sure where the dog was, and that's what needs to be
No,
abundantly...
what I said was I can't answer that question.
Oh, you cannot answer that question. I think we have to be very, very clear because I see reason for the devil to take a foothold here. With something like appeals, when emotions run high, we're going to be running to how it was written and lose the whole appeal effectiveness. We have to have a clear path forward. I don't mind staying here. I love Senate like you. I'd rather stay till 4 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Oh, me too, brother.
And get this right, because I think the potential for Satan to bring a foothold in here, if an appeal were to come forward, I think appeals are always a little bit messy. This would just make it messier. I plead with you, Chairman, that we keep this discussion going and get something concrete so that when an appeal comes, we know the process. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. I'm going to ask the first clerk to read what is before us.
Motion is made and supported that for the purpose of this report of the Advisory Committee, any changes to Appendix 7 of the Church Order also apply to Appendix B of the Regulations for Synodical Procedure and therefore require a 2/3 majority.
The question has been called on that motion. Those in favor of that motion, please say aye. Aye. Oppose the same sign.
Aye.
I judge that is carried. We are at the order of the day, brothers. We will recess until 10:30 sharp. Enjoy your coffee.
Mr. Chairman,
excuse me?
might I recommend that we temporarily suspend the orders of the day to deal with two? I think we can do that relatively quickly, deal with the finance, and then proceed to the order of the day.
You're moving that we
temporarily suspend the orders of the day
suspend the order of the day so that we can take up Advisory 2?
Correct.
I will accept that motion if it's supported. It is supported to suspend the order of the day that we might take up Committee 2 and the budget. Discussion on that. Seeing none, those in favor of suspending the order of the day that we might take up budget, please say aye. Aye. Oppose the same sign. Aye. I judge that's been adopted. I would call forward the brothers for Advisory Committee 2, letter F. And we'll do those pretty soon. Thank you. This is Committee 2F, Brother Jambazian, Brother Alons.
Thank you, Mr.
When you're ready, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the material is in your boxes. It's also available when you came in today. This is 2F, the proposed budget of 2025, and the summary is the 2025-2026 URCNA budget to be approved at Synod. Recommendation number 1, that Synod approve the proposed URCNA budget of 2025 and 2026.
All right, recommendation 1 is before you, that Synod approve the proposed URCNA budget, which is also attached for 25-26. Anyone wish to speak to number 1?
Most of these numbers have already been approved by our body.
That's why we see no one rising to speak. Those in favor of number 1, please say aye. Aye. Oppose the same sign. That is adopted.
Recommendation number 2, that Synod take note that our foreign mission coordinator will continue to receive the cost of living increase as designated at Synod Wyoming 2016. That was a request made by our treasurer to have that in writing for us.
Thank you. Number 2 is before you. Those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Oppose the same sign. That is adopted.
Number 3, that Synod take note that this will make the estimated askings for 2025-2026 to be as follows. Canadian will be 58-59 and then the upcoming year, and then 60-70 in the following year for the U.S. 41-38 for the 2025, and then 42-72 in 2026.
Number 3 is before you.
Now, if there are questions concerning the reason that the Canadian one increased, is my understanding that there are more families in the Canadian side, which is changing the percentages of support. That's why the Canadian is going up as opposed to the U.S. side.
Thank you for that. Brother Koyman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just in keeping with everybody else, happy birthday. And also in light of the many revisions, or as our second clerk said, minor changes, to the church order, I have a point of clarification or maybe a question here. In defining askings, it says in our U.S. Treasury report that it is, everything that I see as askings is always in quotes, right? And so it equals suggested donations. It says that that churches can take a free will offering or use the formula given. Each member church is responsible to participate in the overall ministry. And then additionally, in the February 10 report of 2024, it labels them as earmarked donations. In the Canadian report, it says that they send out statements requesting these budgeted amounts be paid. My question here is, are these synodical askings a donation in the true sense, in the fact that they are a free will donation given by the churches? And if so, then we should operate our budget in accordance with an offering, not dues. If they are dues, then in the decent and order in how we are to operate, let's label them dues. I understand the bad taste that may be there in our history, but let us not let that influence what we are really striving for here in taking care of our synod, in taking care of the synodical responsibilities that our financial advisory committee has done a very good job of doing. Let us call them what they are so that our churches can understand this is not a donation, this is a due that we are contributing to the synodical. So, point of clarification, I want to understand, are we treating these as truly a donation in the fact that we are not, that any church not contributing to that will not face any judgment or any prejudice of any sort?
Mr. Stated Clerk, I believe you can answer that question.
Yeah, I confess, I made the motion that they be called askings. And we did it, and 2 synods affirmed it, that this is a voluntary donation. But it is like the tithe. It's not a legal requirement, it's a moral requirement. If you are a URC church, you are morally obligated to support the work of the church that we agree to do together. But if you do not meet that moral obligation, there are no consequences. You will not be unseated at classis or synod because your church didn't pay the askings. It's meant to be a voluntary donation, not a tax or assessment. And that is its history and origin. And I've got an article for the Christian Renewal, if I get the courage to send it, to explain all that and its history.
Thank you for the answer to the question. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right, very good. Did you want to speak?
If there's no controversy, no.
Okay. Number 3 is before you. I want to ask a question, but I don't know if I have to pass the chair to do it. So I'm going to just ask the question, and if you think you need to take it, please do. I'm just curious about the word estimated. if it's voluntary, why the word estimated? Askings are askings, and you can do them or not.
Correct. So estimated would be on the actual number of families. So the number of families gets updated every year, so the actual amount will change.
Thank you. Number 3 is before you. Seeing no one seeking the floor, those in favor of adopting number 3, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That is adopted.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That concludes the financial material.
Very good. Then we are back to the order of the day, except for Brother DeRoy.
Mr. Chairman, Advisory Committee 1 will meet in the council room, which is through that door over there.
All right, Advisory Committee 1 will meet in the council room. Any other announcements from committee chair? Then we will reconvene promptly, not sharply, at 10:45. Thank you.